Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everybody who's joining us. We'll just start in a couple of seconds here. As people sign in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome you to the Making Healthy Decisions Conference. Hopefully you did join us this morning for the panel discussion that we had. It was such a meaningful conversation with the depth of resources for all of the panelists. So I hope that you were able to join us for that. And I want to welcome you to this session, which is our Tools for Growing Resilience for Health and Human Services. My name is Susie McCormack, and I'm employed by Cornell Cooperative Extension in Orange County, and I'm one of the part of the organizing team for this conference. Just as we get started here, I want to recognize Garnet Health Medical Center, as well as the New York State Parenting Education Partnership for their financial support of this conference, obviously making it available to all of us for free. Here we are. So the New York State Parenting Education Partnership does support parenting educators, parents, and caregivers in creating a nurturing environment for children that children can grow up in. I just want to talk a little bit about Zoom. So we are in a meeting format today, which means that I'm going to invite you all that while you are not speaking, to please mute yourself in order to have that everyone can have good sound quality. And also you are welcome to leave your video cameras on or turn them off. Both of these features can be controlled in the bottom left-hand side of your screen with the a picture of a mic and a picture of a video camera to turn on and off those features. We are going to take questions. I welcome you to use the chat feature, which is also on the bottom of your screen, to type in questions or introduce yourselves. And I want you also to be aware that this session is being recorded. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our presenter, Tamaé Memole. Tamaé brings with her more than 15 years experience in the non-for-profit government sectors to her work as the Director of Program Development with Prevent Child Abuse in New York. She is a nationally certified trainer for the Protective Factors Framework. Most recently, she was a Deputy Director of New York State for the Council of Strong America, where she worked with law enforcement leaders, general officers, and business leaders to leverage their voices in support of policy change to strengthen outcomes for children. Tamaé has worked in the Capital Region for both the United Way and Catholic Charities. She was an active member of the Albany County Prevention Coalition, working to better coordinate and align communication, services, and policies among multiple agencies, touching the lives of at-risk children and families in Albany County. She has also worked with New York State as a Director of Labor for the New York Senate, and she has as the Human Services Budget Analysis for New York State Legislator. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and welcome Tamaé. Let her take it away.
Yay, thank you, Susie. And hello, everyone. I hope you had a chance to get a bite to eat, but not too much to eat, because then, you have that after lunch slump. So let me go ahead and see if I can share my screen. Technology is awesome when it works, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I also want to apologize in case my daughter bursts into the room. I am hiding in her bedroom. There are lots of meetings. My husband's at a meeting today downstairs in our general office space. So there's some competition for sound and space, and this is the quietest spot I could find that had good Wi-Fi in our house. So, but it is not generally my space. So I just wanted to warn everyone just in case. So again, welcome. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Let's see. It's saying it's trying to share. Let me try one more time.
Maya, we can see it.
Oh, you can? It's telling me that sharing is paused. So hopefully slides will advance if I do this. Are you seeing slides advance?
We are not.
Yeah, see? Let me try one more time. Sorry, folks. I'm going to stop sharing and try one more time. All right. Fingers crossed, everybody. How's that?
It looks like it's going to work to me this time.
Okay, yay. All right. All right, so we're going to spend some time today talking about protective factors. And so this is really an overview of what the protective factors framework looks like, what that is. I'm not going to do, there are some slides in here that I had inserted about the adverse childhood experience study and what adverse childhood experiences are. I'm not going to spend a lot of focused time there. I'm happy to take any questions. I'll also share my contact information with all of you if you'd like to follow up after the training. But I do want to make some time at the end of the training. I want to try to ensure that we have some time to answer some real life questions, you know, to answer any questions you might have about specific situations that you may encounter as you're working with families. So I do want to make sure we have some dedicated time there. So I had to shave a little bit off the beginning. So just to get started, all of this work, it really came about because of the adverse childhood experience study that was conducted about 20 years ago now. And why that is because that study was incredibly powerful and meaningful because of the number of folks it took a look at, right? And who they were. So the adverse childhood experience study was a partnership between Kaiser Permanente and the CDC. And they looked at over 17,000, primarily Caucasian, pretty well resourced because they had to have really good health insurance, adults. And so the findings of this study, they asked them questions to try to determine if there was a relationship between adverse experiences that they had while they were growing up and their physical health as adults. And as I said, the findings of the study were pretty dramatic. So what they found was not only that your ACE score, right, the number of adverse childhood experiences that you had as a child, it did definitely impact your physical health as an adult, but it also found that there was a graded dose response relationship between adverse childhood experiences and negative health, right? So what that meant was as the number of stressors, as the number of adverse childhood experiences that you'd had increased, the intensity of your outcome also increased. So that's one key thing to kind of keep in mind as you're thinking about the ACE study. This is the ACE pyramid. This is a CDC slide. And so it shows how the impact of ACEs can affect you up that pyramid, right? And the different domains that it affects you. What they also found is that after they completed the initial pyramid that began with kind of that historical trauma, they found that there were environmental factors that also impacted our ability to process adverse childhood experiences. And those environmental factors are things like racism and implicit bias and microaggressions that happen every single day in our culture. So trauma's impact on brain development. So this is where, you know, not only does it have an impact on your physical health, which is not just that ACEs result in, you know, if you have a really high ACE score, you've experienced a lot of really traumatic things as a child. It doesn't necessarily mean, some people jump to the conclusion that, oh, well, your physical health is affected later on in life because you are more likely to engage in risky behaviors like smoking, like excessively drinking alcohol, all of those things, drug, substance abuse, right? But what they found is that adverse childhood experiences actually affect brain structure, right? And how your brain develops. And that effect on brain development impacts things like your ability to attach in a healthy way, right? So folks with higher ACE scores are more likely to have difficulty forming relationships. There are often difficulties with boundaries, right? And empathy and social isolation. Personal regulation means you have difficulty labeling or identifying your feelings and then communicating them appropriately, right? So trauma can impact all of those things. And one of those things, the last thing on this list, impulse control, difficulty controlling your impulses, that leads to aggression, disrupted sleep and eating patterns. So please keep in mind that we're talking about trauma's impact, not just on physical health, but on actual brain development and brain structure. So what was so valuable about this ACE study? You know, it's problem identification, right? Which is a really important first step, right, in solving problems, right? So it let us know that there's evidence now that adverse childhood experiences impact physical health later in life, right? Because of that knowledge, it brought other disciplines to the table to begin to engage in conversations, right? It created common language for service providers. And for me, the most important piece of this is that the ACE study changed the conversation, because we can no longer, based upon the evidence that was gleaned from the data that came from 17,000 primarily Caucasian, well-resourced folks, the conversation can no longer be about those kids who live in those families in those neighborhoods. The conversation is about all of us. I'm not walking around with this NA score of 0, right? So this is about me. This is about my child. This is about my husband. This is about my family, right? It's not just about the families that we're all working with. It's about all of us, which changes perspective and can change our level of engagement and investment in the work that we're all doing. So I don't want you all to get stuck on ACE scores, right? A lot of times when folks are talking about ACE scores, they get really excited about learning the ACE score of everyone in their lives, right? Everyone they're working with. We've had organizations come to us and seek guidance on how to assess the ACE score, the average ACE score of their whole community, right? And so my question is this: what are you going to do with that information? Why is that ACE score so important to you? And the second part of that question is it really the ACE score that's so critically important? And I ask that question because I have a friend who has an ACE score of 9. Her childhood was unimaginable. And she is one of the most empathic, kind, successful, driven, well-rounded, awesome grandmother, like all around fabulous human being who loves life and sees joy in everything. Like, I want to be her when I grow up, right? I have a girlfriend who has an ACE score of 2, and she faces many more challenges every single day. So is it really about the ACE score, or is it about something else, which is what your community is so focused on, right? And that's resilience. So if it's about resilience, right, which we know from the research can balance that fulcrum, right, balance that seesaw of negative outcomes and positive outcomes. If we can build resilient communities, we can impact the long-term effect of ACEs on every single person in our community. So that's where we're going to spend our time today, is talking about what that looks like, how we do it, and then take some questions at the end to talk about, actually, this is what it looks like for me tomorrow. Okay.
gesture from residents of the Lost Dogs home this morning.
The human walking program provides desk-bound Melburnians a chance to get out of the office, get some exercise and make a new best friend.
It's hoped two-legged participants become so enamored with the experience they'll eventually decide to adopt their companion.
It's a wonderful idea. In fact, it's where the dogs are doing the rescuing.
Here's a fun way to pass the time during your lunch break by walking a dog. This is a great idea.
The Lost Dogs Home is having a human walking program event.
Encouraging office workers to get out from behind their desk, put those deadlines to one side and get to know a dog that's up for adoption at the Lost Dogs Home.
They're all exceptionally attractive dogs.
I patted nearly every dog here. Yeah. I fell in love with a couple of them. Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a couple of them home actually.
I wish it was a weekly thing. Yeah, that would be really good. Yeah.
So I start the training with this video because I think it's such a great demonstration of the impact of perspective shift. These are the same dogs. So I saw this ad last night on TV. It's one of the shelter ads. They get a lot of play airtime around the holidays, especially where I think it's Sarah McLachlan starts singing, and then they show all of these videos and photos of these scared, starving, frightened dogs in the backs of cages or out in the cold. And I start crying immediately and have to leave the room. You know, I can't watch those videos, right? What I love about this is that this campaign, these are the same dogs, right? But I feel differently about these dogs than I do about the dogs in the other video. I want to engage, right? And so the protective factors framework, what we're going to be talking today is building some intention. How do we build muscle memory for intention around staying in this perspective shift, right? We want to always look at the positive, right? Be strength-based. So how do we begin doing that? What does that look like? So this is a cartoon that is used a lot, but it's to identify what you see, like what is your first impulse? What are some of the things you see? Let's see, I'm not sure if I can see chat, but you're welcome to throw things in the chat. But I can also share some of the things that we hear from participants. Some of the really common things are mom appears to be pregnant and she's smoking in the house. We see, you know, a lot of chaos, a lot of disarray. Let's see if I can get chat up here.
I can there's a few things in the chat. There's clutter. Someone says clutter. Someone says dad is getting a hug.
I love that.
Additionally, the boy is happy to see his dad and the mom seems to be pregnant and happy.
Yeah.
There's a knife on the counter, accessible to the child.
Yeah.
There's toys, foods, and books.
We've used this with child care regulators, and they had a field day with this cartoon, right? So now I'm going to ask you to watch another short video with me.
20 things we should say more often. Number 20, thank you. And not just on Thanksgiving, every day. Number 19, excuse me. Number 18, here's a surprise corn dog that I bought you because you're my friend. There'll be more corn dogs and more happy people. This is a good idea. Corn dog for you, corn dog for you, corn dog for you. Number 17, I'm sorry. Number 16, I forgive you. Number 15, you can do it! But don't say it if it's something you can't do. Number 14, another thing that we should say more often, I have barbecue sauce in my shirt too. Before you say something about the barbecue sauce on somebody else's shirt, take a look at the barbecue sauce on your own shirt. Number 13, please, Number 12. Everything is going to be okay. Number 11. Oh, you got me a corn dog too? You shouldn't have, buddy. Number 10. I don't know. I know a lot of people who need to say that. My sister. Number 9. You're so awesome, I named my dog after you. Wait. That could hurt someone's feelings. I mean boat. I named my boat after you. Wait, who even has a boat? You're so awesome, I legally changed my name to yours. Wait, that's super creepy. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it. Number 8. Hello, person that I've never met before. Here's a high five. Number 7. My sports team is not always the best sports team. It takes a big man to say that. Number 6. Nothing. Sometimes that's the best thing you can say. Number 5. Doesn't mean anything, but it's just really funny. Number 4. I disagree with you, but I still like you as a person who is a human being, and I'll treat you like that. Because if I didn't, it would make everything bad, and that's what lots of people do, and it's lame. Whew, I need a water break, y'all. It's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be mean. Number 3. Sometimes you just gotta scream. Number 2. Life is tough, but so are you. Sometimes we all need to be reminded to keep going. Number 1. Something nice. Anything. If you can't think of anything nice to say, you're not thinking hard enough. So what about you? What do you think people should say more often? Leave a comment below and let's hear it. Oh, and I got a bonus one for you. Something that we should say more often? Let's dance.
So pancake, subscribe.
Things.
There you go. So now I want everybody to put their kid president hat on and type into the chat what you see. And I agree. I love kid president. He just makes my heart happy every time I see this. So love, you see love. I love that. Right? So I think, one of the things that I hope you walk away from this training with is a new appreciation and new intention for focusing on what's strong first, not what's wrong, right? It's really easy to see what's wrong because it hits you between the eyes like a 2x4, right? We are all wired to know when stuff is not okay with us, right? Sometimes it's a lot harder to see that artwork that's stuck to the refrigerator door and appreciate the meaning that's behind that. So I think focusing on what's strong first is the key to relationship building with families. And if we want families to engage in services that are being offered, we need to build relationships that are authentic and that build trust. And I don't know about all of you, but when somebody comes at me for the first time and they're wagging their fingers at me, right, telling me that I'm a hot mess, I know I'm a hot mess most of the time, right? I'm lucky I leave my house with pants on most days, right? So I know I'm a hot mess. I'm going to not be all that receptive to that person who's coming at me with all their negativity, right? But if somebody can see something, a strength-based approach that's authentic, right? And begins identifying my assets and building on those, that's going to open the door to meaningful relationship building. So if we get that perspective shift is really important, so what do we do now? Like, what do we do with this? Well, I'm going to talk to you about how we do this, right? And that's on focusing on the protective factors for families, on intentionally strengthening protective factors of families in our communities. We're going to spend time talking really about 3 of them today, just because of time. So these protective factors they're the opposite of risk factors for families, right? So they were developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy based upon oodles and oodles and oodles of early childhood research on child abuse and neglect. So these domains were identified. They're not the only protective factors out there for families, but these 5 are really easy for anybody in the community to strengthen in families. That's why they're so important. That's why the Children's Trust Fund Alliance took these protective factors, worked with the Center for the Study of Social Policy, and developed this framework that we're going to be talking about today. So the first protective factor is parental resilience. So when I talk about parental resilience, I'm talking about how do we help parents process stress in a way that allows them to nurture their children. We want them to be stronger when they are in a place. I mean, bad things happen, right? Stress happens to everyone. Everyone's experiences crisis. But how you respond to that is critically important for kids. Like I said this morning, we know based upon the research that the majority of children who are injured by their parents at home, those injuries happen under times of intense stress. We also know that those parents love their children as much as I love mine. And so what that tells me is that we have a lot of parents, the parents of over 65,000 children every year in New York State, who love their children, but lack the skills to appropriately process stress. So what is it that we can do for these families, right? How do we release that pressure valve of stress for them? How can we step forward in a way that's intentional so that we are not adding to their stress? Because let me tell you, I have a 9-year-old daughter. And so there are a lot of different systems, right, that touch our life. There's the school system, there's a healthcare system, right? All of those systems give me stress. They don't mean to. They want to make my life easier. They're trying to be helpful, and they stress me out. And you know what? I'm already walking around with a boatload of stress of my own. I'm already walking around bone tired because 2 things you can count on when you encounter a parent, I don't care who they are tired. And even though that tired is their new normal, it doesn't make them any less tired, right? So they're tired and they're stressed out. Because let me tell you something about parenting, which I never realized. No matter how hard you're working at making good decisions for your child and for your family and nurturing, and I mean, my background is early childhood development, right? No matter what I do, as a parent, I epically fail every single day, every day. And all I can do is apologize, be accountable to whoever it is that I have wronged, including my child, right? So apologize and then wake up the next morning and try harder, right? So parents you're encountering already feel like they're failures. And like I said, they're carrying around a boatload of stress. So what is it that you can do for families to help alleviate stress? Demonstrate any way you can that they're valued, right? Intervene, make connections with parents. So when you hear that tantruming child at Target in aisle, 6, instead of sighing and avoiding that aisle and going back when that parent and that child have left, you're making a beeline for that aisle, right? You're connecting with that mom, letting that mom know that, you know what, I'm not alone. And it's okay. And somebody's here to kind of walk through with me. So we worked with a pediatric practice in the Capital Region who brought us in to do some protective factors work. They were already screening for ACEs at every well child visit, but they were concerned about, they had a number of families on their caseload that they worried about when they didn't see them for a while, right? When they left, they'd worry about them. And so they wanted us to come back and do some of this protective factors work with the whole staff. And so we went back for a series of lunch hour visits where this pediatrician he had a large practice, and he brought all of the doctors and social workers and nurses and receptionists, the whole staff was involved. So we did the training, but then we went back for a series of conversations they would bring their real life situations, like this happened. I don't know what to do in this situation. And one of the stories they shared was there was an RN who was just out of nursing school. This was her first job. And pretty early on in her tenure there was a family that appeared on the schedule in the morning. And it was a family that when their name appeared on the schedule in the morning, everyone in the office collectively sighed, right? Like, oh, not today, right? So this mom and her 2-year-old came in, and they arrived and they were in the waiting room. And almost immediately, folks in the waiting room they were uncomfortable with the way that she was interacting with her little guy. And she was getting more stressed and speaking to him, like I said, in a manner that made folks uncomfortable. So staff decided they needed to get her out of the waiting room, get her into an exam room. So this nurse went to call their names and take them back to the exam room. And as they were going back to the exam room, mom's stress had escalated to the point where she was now dragging the little guy down the hall by his elbow, yelling at him for his behavior. They get into the exam room, and the little boy hears that he's getting a shot and flips out. He's under the exam table, crying, yelling. He's not coming out. Mom is now screaming at him, swearing at him, telling him that she's going to beat him when they get home. And this nurse is standing there, not like paralyzed, not knowing how to make this better, right? And so these were the kinds of conversations that we had with staff. And so what that nurse could have done in that moment, if you're tethered to two fundamental principles, releasing stress, right? Relieving stress for families and increasing parenting skills. What we talked about, something she could do the next time was, as soon as they're in that exam room, that little guy's under the exam table tantruming, she looks at mom and she touches her arm and she says, you know what? It's okay. I got this. This happens all the time. She gets under the exam table with that little guy, starts to de-escalate him a little bit, coax him out, build relationship, make him feel slightly safer. He comes out, he's still going to be upset that he's getting a shot, okay? But mom's going to see that that's developmentally appropriate. So in that brief moment, mom has heard that, you know what, this happens all the time. It's not happening because she's a bad mom. It's not happening because he's a bad kid. When the nurse says, and don't worry, I got this, and she gets under the exam table, all of that responsibility for mom fixing this and making this better goes away, right? It's not mom's job to fix this. So I can tell you right now, all of her stress, well, a lot of it anyway, she starts taking deep breaths, right? She's no longer red in the face. Her heart's no longer beating a mile a minute. And that family is going to be safer when they go home. I've been that mom carrying my 2-year-old out of a toy store like a battering ram as she's screaming her head off, right? Completely my fault. I knew I pushed it too far, right? That day shopping. And I had to carry her out and lay her on the ground in the hallway of the mall, right? Mortified, willing to do anything to make the noise stop because I was so embarrassed. And I used to be a preschool special ed teacher. So I'm standing over her saying, oh, honey, I'm sorry that made you so sad, right? Inside, I'm freaking out, right? All of my alarm bells are going off and I'm just frantic, right? First person that walked by looked at me and said, ha, that was me last week. I swear to God, the tantrum stops. Immediately, I stopped sweating, right? So I've experienced that as a parent, and I know what a difference that makes. So anytime you have an opportunity to alleviate stress from a parent, do it, because it makes that family safer. And what I would say too is that now, after the end of today, now that you have all this information, I would propose that not only do you have that opportunity, but it becomes a responsibility because you know now what a difference it makes for families. So do what you can to be intentional about alleviating stress for families. That makes them stronger. That makes parents more resilient. Because then they're able to appropriately nurture their kids, right? And they have a more positive attitude about parenting and their child, which is what we want to see. So the next protective factor we're going to talk a little bit about today is concrete supports in times of need. I think everybody knows how important it is to have access to services that will be helpful when you're in a time of crisis, right? But it's also not just about knowing where your food bank is and being able to access that, right? It's not always about food insecurity or housing security, although those are big ones, right? But concrete supports in times of need can be smaller, right? And not necessarily as tangible for folks. So something to think about when we're thinking about, again, this is related to parental resilience, right? All of these protective factors are interconnected. Have you ever known anyone who was in a crisis because there was an illness in the family or a death in the family, or something was happening in that family, and you went to your friend and you said, God, is there anything I can do? What can I do to help? Right? So I was the queen of this. I would tell friends, you know, please, I mean this sincerely. If there's anything I can do, call me anytime. Did they ever call me and tell me what I could do to help? No, I didn't get those calls, right? So I had a real important life lesson a few years ago. Somebody that I work with, her father was killed in an ATV accident. It was during the summertime, and her mom and dad lived in Cortland, New York. So it was a few hours from Albany. And so she was on her way out to be with her mom, and her siblings were gathering. And so all of us as staff, we were calling her to express our sympathies, and also to ask, what can we do to help? My boss, when he called her and expressed his sympathies. And then he said to her, hey, can I mow your lawn while you're gone? Is it okay if I do that? And what she told me later, because she was going to be gone for about 2 weeks. And as I said, this was in the middle of the summer. When she returned and we were kind of talking, she told me that he was the only person who offered her something real. She knew we were all there to identify support, you know, to be helpful, if she could identify what it was she needed. Folks who are in crisis can't identify what they need. They're overwhelmed. That's the definition of a crisis, right? It's a situation that is overwhelming and almost paralyzing. So when I was asking friends what I could do, I was putting the responsibility of identifying their need on them. So what I learned from this situation at work is that now I just do it. I had a girlfriend who is a foster mom. They were she and her foster daughter were in real crisis. And I just asked her, are you going to be home at 6 o'clock? And what are you allergic to? What are you and your daughter allergic to, right? And I just showed up with dinner. And that I heard from her later on how meaningful that was, because everybody else was offering nebulous help, right? So I share these stories with you because if you ever feel the need to ask somebody, what can I do? Is there anything you need? The answer is always yes. You're asking because you know that they're in crisis. They're trapped, right? So just do it. Just take them down off that ledge, right? And help them and offer that assistance. One of the things too that I'll say is that because you are working with families, they are going to look to you often as the experts to identify services that would be helpful for them, right? You have a trusted relationship with them, and they also view you as the expert for whatever service you're providing them, whether it's childcare, you're a teacher and it's education, you are a child welfare worker, you are a member of the faith community, you're in law enforcement, whatever you are, you're an expert, right? So even though you didn't sign up to know where all of these services are in the community. Do what you can to identify those. You guys have, I talk about that resource mapping that you guys have done in Orange County, and it is mind-blowing and awesome. And I try to share that with every community that I have contact with because it's so impressive. So you guys all have those resources at your fingertips. So make sure that you're able to share that information with families. So we're going to talk about another thing that's related to concrete supports in times of need, and that's asking for help. So I'm going to present two scenarios for you. And the first one is, so you're at a public place and you go in to use the bathroom, and you're in the stall, you do what you got to do, and you turn to the toilet paper roll and it's just spinning cardboard, right? There's no toilet paper. So you are sitting there trapped. You hear a couple of folks come into the bathroom, they're talking, and you debate whether or not you're going to ask one of them for some toilet paper. So do you ask for help? Who gives a shout out? Right, to ask for help for toilet paper? And you can just type in chat, yes, no.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so that's great. As you know, some people will do trainings and have these conversations, and there are a lot of folks who don't give that shout out. I'm not sure what they do. I should ask, like, what do you do? How long do you sit there? But yeah, I mean, so can't spare a square. I love it. Okay, so second scenario, you are the person in your household who is in charge of your budget, your monthly budget. So just a couple of weeks ago, your car broke down and it wiped out your savings because it was like 3 times as expensive as you were prepared to have happen, right? So it cleaned you out. Your savings are gone. Any cushion is gone, and it's impacted this month's budget. And you had to get your car fixed because if you don't get your car fixed, you can't get to work, right? So again, you're trapped in that. I have to spend this money. So you go through your budget and you realize you're not going to have enough money for food. Okay, by the end of the month. So until your next paycheck. So you go through the list again and you identify who you don't really have to pay this month, right? So there are a couple folks that it's not awesome to let slide, but you're going to let them slide. So you cross them off. You go through the budget again, you're still going to be short significantly. So you go through the budget a third time, and this time you are only paying the people you absolutely have to pay. Like, no joke, you have to pay them. You're still going to be short for food. Who asks for help? This is harder, right? Because it's not just about being trapped and needing some toilet paper. That can happen to anybody, right? And there's no culpability, right? There's no self-judgment, like this is my fault, I should have been more prepared, right? So this is harder. So I'm going to share this with you.
How many of you think you want to be more vulnerable and dare greatly? How many of you are comfortable asking for help? Yeah. That was awesome. Then it sucks. Yeah.
Asking for help from whom?
Right. How many of you had rather give help than ask for help? Okay, so let me just ruin this for you. When you cannot ask for help without self-judgment, you are never really offering help without judgment. So if
stand up and tell the truth. Okay, let's hear that one again. I gotta write that down.
No,
I hear it better when I write it down.
This one was devastating for me because where are my social workers? Yes. Hello. Okay, so we're professional help givers. But how many of us are good at asking for it? Here's the bottom line. Ready? When you cannot accept and ask for help without self-judgment, then when you offer other people help, you are always doing so with judgment.
Really?
Always. Because you have attached judgment to asking for help. And so one way I got a lot of my worth for a lot of years was helping other people.
Yeah.
But I would never ask for help, which meant every time I was helping you, I was judging you. And when you extract worthiness for helping people, that's judgment. That's judgment. When you don't extract worthiness and you think, I'm just helping you because one day I'm gonna need help, that's connection. That's vulnerability. Yeah.
Well, you teaching tonight, girl. You teaching.
So I love that video. I love Brene Brown. I saw it in chat. Somebody shouted out Brene Brown. She's really come to the national stage and gotten a lot of national attention after a TED Talk that she'd done. That was really phenomenal. She's got a special on Netflix, a ton of books. She's phenomenal. She's a shame and vulnerability researcher out of the University of Texas. And the first time I saw this, I thought, wow, that's really great information. I'm glad everybody else heard it because, this doesn't apply to me, but it's got to be important for them, right? It's a powerful message. And then it haunted me, right? So, and it haunted me. Now I know why, because I'm not a help asker. I was not raised to be a help asker, right? My dad is Japanese. He didn't come to this country until he was almost 30. And there are a lot of cultural things associated with asking for help. In the Japanese culture, there's a loss of face and shame. And so I was raised to believe that if I needed to ask for help, I'd failed. So there's a whole lot of self-judgment that happens when I need to ask for help. It's really hard. And when I realized that I had spent most of my professional life in some profession that was helping people in some way, but I still was not asking for help. When I made that connection between this video and myself, that was a really big epiphany for me. And I realized that, all of the implicit bias and unconscious bias trainings I've been to, it's more than it being unconscious. Implicit bias is so hard to change, not just because you're not aware you have it, but because you truly believe you don't. So you never go there to look at it. You never go there to examine it. You never open that door. And I'd never made that connection between self-judgment and judgment of others. I felt like I know what it feels like when I'm in my judgy place. Right? We all have that judgy place that we try not to go to too often, right? And we know what that feels like. I know when I'm being judgy. So I thought that because I knew what it felt like to be judgy, this wasn't about me. This was totally about me. And I didn't know how to fix it because I am riddled with self-judgment when I ask for help, right? So I decided that I couldn't come up with anything else other than practicing asking for help, right? It's like crossing your arms one way and then somebody says cross them the other way and it feels really weird and oogie until you just kind of take that breath and you focus on it for 15 seconds and then suddenly it doesn't feel so weird, right? So that was my messed up logic around trying to tackle self-judgment, but I couldn't come up with anything else. So I decided I was going to go into work and ask for help. I was traveling a lot at the time. I mean, like traveling from Albany to Buffalo, delivering a training and then driving home that day and then doing it again at the end of the week. So I was traveling a lot, right? And so I went into my boss and I said, hey, Tim, you got a second? Yeah, come on in, sit down. And so I'm gearing myself up to ask this question. And I'm now sweating. I'm pretty sure I was red because I was sweating so profusely. I also distinctly remember trying really hard not to let tears fall. So I know my eyes were all glassy, right? This is how incredibly stressed out I was by saying, hey, I've got a lot on my plate. I think I need a hand. That's all I said, right? And he leaned forward and said, sure, I can do this training. I can take this screening. I can go here. I can do this report. What else do you need? right? So he made it really, really easy for me to ask for help. So I've been better about my practicing asking for help at work, right? But I came to the realization anyway, that if I was going to really sever that connection between self-judgment and judgment, I needed to live this wholly. So I couldn't just do it at work. I couldn't compartmentalize this. This had to become part of my bones, right? And how I stepped forward. So I really started looking at this, and I realized my husband and I have been together almost 27 years now. And I realized that he has spent too much time wandering around our house, wondering why I'm mad at him, right? So, example, I go out, run an errand, come back with 40-pound bag of dog food. He doesn't know that I've got a 40-pound bag of dog food in the car, but I'm huffing and puffing, throwing it on my shoulder, come in the house. He's downstairs, he's a musician, he's practicing his banjo. He's not immediately upstairs asking if he can help me. I know he heard the garage door. I know he heard me walk in, but he's not there helping me carry the dog food. He didn't know I'd carried dog food, right? He didn't know I brought it in, right? But somehow I'm a little snippy and snarky because he didn't anticipate my needs, right? He didn't read my mind. And so that's not fair. That wasn't fair to him. And so I decided I was going to start asking him for help. And so one day I just did it, hey, honey, I need a hand with something when you get a chance. Boom. You know what? He was really happy to help me. And so my journey continues. I am not where I want to be around self-judgment and asking for help, but it is getting less hard. I am definitely better at it at home, and I'm still working at it at work. But I'm trying, and there's intention there around doing that, because I never, ever want anyone that I'm helping to feel judged by me. And I think that if I could have one unicorn wish come true for the families that we all work with, it's that judgment would be eradicated. I think that that's the single largest barrier to whole, authentic service engagement. Self-judgment of themselves, being judged by the folks that they're seeking help from. And I think if we could eradicate judgment, that would change lives in our community. So that's why I share this. All right. Moving on, social emotional competence of children. So we talked this morning about social emotional competence, and I think if we could just pick one protective factor to talk about and to really focus on for children, this would be the one. This is the golden ticket for kids because it unlocks everything, right? When you're able to regulate your emotions and your behaviors, it unlocks peer relationships, right? Which provide social connections. That's another protective factor, right? And peers provide those concrete supports in times of need and help make stronger parents, right? Because that's an outlet. It's part of self-care, your social relationships. So social emotional competence of children is critical. It's also really critical for school readiness and the ability to attend in class. So social emotional competence is something we should all be laser focused on, building stronger socially emotionally competent kids. One of the things that I think we often lose sight of when we're working with little people, when we're living with little people, is that he's not giving you a hard time. He's having a hard time, right? He's having a hard time. So when that child is tantruming at the market, he's not giving mom a hard time. He's having a hard time. So that flips the script on how you can feel about behaviors, challenging behaviors with kids, right? If we know, and we're really conscious all the time, that children lack the skills to understand and process emotions and to express them, and we can go to the place where we recognize that we are the adult helpers in their lives, that changes things for kids. We recognize and legitimize their feelings. How often do you hear a little voice crying someplace? You'll be out and you hear a little voice crying, and then you hear a grown-up voice say, "Oh, stop crying, you're okay." He's not okay. That's why he's crying, right? So we've got to first, if we want to build strong, socially, emotionally competent kids, we have to, number one, legitimize their feelings. We have to help them understand not just what feelings look like this mad face, right? But we have to help these little people understand what emotions feel like. What does it feel like when you're mad? What does it feel like when you're sad? What does it feel like when you're happy? Get them to recognize what their physical triggers are, because then they can begin to self-regulate, right? I know that when somebody comes at me with something that I find really challenging, I get a feeling like in the core, right? My diaphragm gets tight. I know that that's my signal, my physical cue to take that deep breath and not be reactive, right? I know I need to breathe so that I can appropriately respond or disengage, right? But if I don't know that that's a trigger, I'm just going to fly off the handle, right? So reminding folks that he's not giving you a hard time, he's having a hard time is really, really important. Small humans have really big feelings, right? And they don't have the skills to appropriately process and express those. So as I said, legitimize their feelings, talk to kids about what it feels like, emphasize the importance of respect and model it. And when I talk about respect, I'm not just talking about the way you're speaking to a child, but the way you're interacting with the child. How many times do you see a grown-up walk up to a child without any warning or without saying a word and wipe their nose? How would you feel as an adult if somebody just walked up to you without any warning and wiped your nose, right? No way, right? My boundaries have been violated. It's not respectful behavior, right? We need to engage with children in a way that's respectful. If we want them later on to understand body ownership and autonomy and consent, we have to give them control of their bodies when they're little, right? It doesn't mean that we have to acquiesce every time they don't want to do something, but we need to think about, there was that movie Freaky Friday, right? Where mom and the daughter switch places through some magic spell, right? Do Freaky Friday. Think about Freaky Friday with a child. Like if you were switching places with that child and you had all of your consciousness that you have now and all of your awareness, but you were unable to express it, how would it feel being that child interacting with you, right? That's respect. Doing with a child rather than doing to a child is respect, right? And then always the thread through all of the protective factors is no judgment ever, right? No judgment of self, no judgment of others. So this is some really powerful work, what we're going to talk about next, that's come out of Mass General. There's a group of child psychologists there who have developed collaborative problem solving as a strategy for working with children who present with chronically challenging behaviors. And while their work is focused on usually on elementary and older children, and we're talking, like I said, chronic challenging behaviors, I think there's a lot of important messaging for all children. And our interactions with all children. And it's that kids do well if they can, right? Kids do well if they can. So if he can do well, he will do well. If she can do well, she will do well, right? And if she can't do well, then something must be standing in her way. And it's my job as a trusted adult in her life to try to help problem solve and eliminate those barriers, help her learn how to eliminate those barriers herself, right? But here's something interesting. If we believe that kids do well if they can, why have we set up as family systems, as school systems, discipline methods that actually choose to incentivize behavior, right? So traditional behavior modification is you incentivize good behavior, you de-incentivize, right? You can extinguish negative behaviors or behaviors you don't want to see through ignoring or through some kind of negative consequence, right? That assumes that kids do well if they want to, not kids do well if they can, right? So all of our systems of discipline are assuming that kids do well if they want to, when they don't have the skills to do well, right? And so what we need to focus on as adults to help kids be successful are really 3 areas. That developmentally, kids don't develop until later on. We all expect 2-year-olds to have difficulty with flexibility, right? We all expect 2-year-olds to have difficulty with problem solving, right? And frustration tolerance. Those are the 3 skill sets that older children, kids as they get older, who present with chronic challenging behaviors universally lack. Flexibility, frustration tolerance, and problem solving. And so all of the work that we're doing in schools, so, I'm thinking of the clip charts, right? In my daughter's school, they have the clip charts where you can work your way up. Everybody starts in the green zone, and you can either go down to yellow, orange, red, or you work your way up to purple, right? The kids who are always in the red zone may be the children who are trying the hardest. So what then does that constant failure of being in the red zone do to their self-esteem? And at what point does that turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy for these kids, right? So the kids who are always in the blue and purple zone, it's easy for them. They have the skills to do that, right? So we're rewarding those kids for doing something that's a lot easier for them than the kids who are always in the orange and the red zone, right? So just something to think about is how is it, if we want to build socially, emotionally competent children, we need to recognize that there are specific skills that we need to build in children. So the last thing that I'm going to ask you all to do is to think of one sentence that you wish every child in the world could hear at least one time. Usually do this as an exercise when we're all in person. And it's a whispering exercise with circles. And so every person in the room winds up getting flooded with all these good wishes. And it's a really powerful, powerful experience. But since we're all virtual, we can't really do that. So the next best thing is asking you all to write this sentence out. Keep it someplace that you're going to see it every day. Put it in your pocket, put it on a mirror in your bathroom, on your dresser, on your desk. All of us run into children, every week, grocery store, not so much as we used to, right, pre-pandemic, but we all are encountering children. Tell them something positive. Tell them that kids get bombarded with negative messaging from their peers, from their parents, from everybody, every day. Be that voice and plant that seed for that child, because at some point, that child is going to hear your words, or at least feel the way your words made them feel. And that's going to mean something. They may not remember it was you. They may not remember your voice or your face, but they'll remember those words and how it made them feel. And that's really important. And I say that and I share this because one of the very first trainings for protective factors that I ever did, we did that exercise that I just told you about. And there was a gentleman who was part of that exercise, and I was at a conference for family child care providers. And he participated, and he didn't seem all that into it, but he participated. And as I was breaking down projector and stuff after the conference, he came back into the room and he's like, "Hi." I said, "Hey." He said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second about that last exercise?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Is there a way that I could maybe preset that better or debrief it better that would be more helpful?" And he interrupted me and he said, No, you don't understand. That's not what I want to tell you." He said, I never heard those words when I was a kid growing up." And then he started to cry. And he said, "I work with children every day, so I've never said those words." He said, "That was the most powerful experience I've ever had. And I realized what I have not been sharing with all of the children that I work with every day." So he made me promise him that I would do some version of this activity every single time I trained. So I promised him I would, because it was that impactful for him. And he felt that it was that important that that messaging needed to be shared with folks. So I share that with you. Please say those words. Kids need to hear them. Adults, parents, grown-ups, everybody needs to hear those positive words of affirmation. They're very powerful and they can change trajectory for families. So I would like to open this up now to questions. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to take emails afterwards. If something comes to you in a couple of days, I'm happy to talk with you. We can set up a time to talk or converse by email. That's fine too. But I can stop sharing my screen. And like I said, I'm happy to take any questions that folks might have about what this looks like for you moving forward. Oh, so Stacy, it was just think of one sentence that you wish every child had the opportunity to hear. And I'm happy if you guys want to come off mute and put your cameras on.
I just would like to say the one thing I would say is that I love you so much.
Yeah. You know, giving, letting children know that they are valued, letting other people know that they're valued, especially now, I think, you know, for me, I didn't realize, my husband and I joke about how we've pretty much been practicing social distancing our whole lives. You know, we both tend to be hermits, but for folks who aren't really social, we've felt the impact of the social distancing of the pandemic. It's been powerful. So for folks, we're all feeling isolated, and so any connection, social connections are incredibly powerful. And, you know, that's one of the protective factors we didn't talk about today, but, you know, quality social connections actually help you live longer. That's crazy powerful information, right? It's not the number of connections, but the quality of the connections you have. So making sure that you're intentional about those connections is really, really important stuff.
I'd like to put in a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
I've listened to Brene Brown and read some of her books before, and I'm in awe of her. So I'm really glad that you were able to share some of her words. My granddaughter had an experience just recently with the online schooling, and it's sad, but she was shamed in front of her classmates for speaking out because she didn't understand something, so the teacher shamed her. Thankfully, my son-in-law was right there and stepped in, and the thing is, my daughter was concerned, well, were you just overly tired? Because he works nights, and she wanted to make sure that he wasn't just, you know, being angry because of being overtired. And he said, no, he said that he's been listening to her be sharp with their daughter for a couple of weeks. And he just felt, no, it's time now. We're going to step in and set boundaries. And I applauded him. I thought it was phenomenal because the child needs to see that. She thinks she's done something wrong because the teacher shamed her. So she thought, oh, this is my thing. I did something wrong. But no, her father stepping in showed, no, we need to have boundaries. These are boundaries. The teacher can't pass that boundary of shaming you and treating you like this in front of the class. So it was very, very powerful. And what I was thinking of is with children and with anybody, they matter, they're worthy. And those are very, very powerful statements, because look how easy it is to say, no, I'm not worthy, or I'm ugly, or I'm stupid, or I'm dumb. And those words just bring you down. But if you say, no, I'm worthy, I matter. Those are such powerful words, those affirmations, but you have to say it to where you mean it, to really feel it. And that's what we need to teach our children as well as ourselves. We need to hear that for ourselves as well. So that's my 2 cents.
No, thank you for sharing that. You know, I think research tells us that, I can't remember what the ratio is, but the ratio of good things that are said to a child that need to be said to outweigh one bad thing, right? One negative thing. It's astronomical, like the power of words for children. And I think one of the other things that I love that he stepped forward and let her know that, number one, it's not okay. Number two, I've got your back, right? And so I'm still here, right?
Exactly.
That's powerful stuff, and really impactful for kids. I think one thing that I think folks who are working with children on a daily basis sometimes lose sight of is that often, even with the best of intentions, children hear words differently than adults intend them to be heard often, right? And so this isn't the situation that you're referencing, but it triggered an experience that I heard about from a friend of mine's child, right? So she was in this is when she was in second grade, and she went home to her mom because at the end of the first week, apparently there was a little boy who was having a lot of difficulty transitioning from being home in the summer to going to school, and he was crying every morning. And after a few days, the teacher said to him, I'm sorry you're so sad, but this is second grade and we don't do crying. And so we're going over here to the rug to do, I don't know, whatever activity it was. And when you're through and you pull yourself together, we'd love for you to join us. Right?
Wow.
What that little girl and every other child, I mean, the teacher was trying to set some boundaries and expectations for behavior, right? While still trying to help him feel as though they wanted him to participate. But what every kid in that room heard, and what this little girl, this friend of my daughter's, went home crying, is that teacher doesn't care if we're sad. And it's not okay to cry and to have feelings and to be sad in her room, right? That's what the messaging was. And I know this teacher, and she is a lovely human being. So I know where she was coming from, but kids heard it differently. And it's really powerful. And I think what's difficult, I think, too, for classroom teachers, and this is even before there was remote learning, which I don't know how you heard those cats all day long, right? But what's difficult, I think, for teachers is that every child requires something different of you. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach that works. And so if you have a really room, this is something we experienced with my daughter. She had there were a couple of kids that had difficulty attending, right? So the teacher was always kind of on them, right? And so there were really, really strict boundaries in class. And when she was in second grade, it's also the first year at this school where they go to the bathroom outside of the room, right? And so the bathroom's not in the classroom, right? So the messaging was always, if a child had to go bathroom, okay, but make it quick, right? And that was to prevent those boys from playing in the bathroom, right, with all the water and never coming back to class. What my little girl heard was, okay, make it quick. She's very literal, right? And she is also very eager to please, and she's afraid of doing the wrong thing. So she was going to the bathroom. She knew she had to wash her hands. So she wasn't actually voiding her bladder the whole way. So she would have time to wash her hairs, get back. I took her to the pediatrician because I thought she had a urinary tract infection. No, we had to have her sit on the toilet backwards for a weekend to retrain her muscles how to void her bladder completely.
Wow.
Because of these teacher's words, right? And so teachers don't understand, right? When you have multiple needs for kids in a class, I think it's really hard. It is. It's hard, but I think it's important to share that information with teachers when there's a problem, but also recognize as that conversation is happening with that teacher has a whole lot that you don't know about in their backpack too. Right? We're all walking around with those invisible backpacks filled with stress, filled with trauma, filled with anxieties, and filled with a lot of issues, right? And so how do we work through that together and recognize that we're both here for the same child, right? Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions? I think one of the things that we've started doing is, and this was based upon the learning that we had from that pediatrician's office, is that finding intentional time to have conversations about what your work and your words looks like with children and families is really important. Making sure that you're unpacking situations that have happened, or that you anticipate might happen, and making sure you always stay tethered to those two fundamental principles. Are my words and actions relieving stress, and am I increasing parent skills? If you can stay rooted there, and like I said, it requires a lot of attention, because, I know that my pediatrician wants to make my life easier. They want me to be a better mom. They want my child to be healthier, right? But they create a lot of stress for me sometimes. The school does the same thing, right? So example at the school is every school thing comes to our home with one critical piece of information that's missing. Right? That's not helpful. I need all of the information, right? So making sure that we're not through our efforts to be really helpful and to partner with families, that we're not adding on to the pile that they're already under, and feeling more pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So we've started having conversations with organizations, bringing them together so that they are creating intentional space specifically to have those discussions, so that those questions and those conversations about challenging experiences, challenging kids, challenging families aren't happening, on the way to the parking lot, or they're not happening as part of a staff meeting, but that there's a staff meeting that's dedicated to brainstorm that. When I was working with that pediatric practice, I'm not an expert, right? I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a clinician. I'm not an MD. And so they didn't need me for those conversations. And so after the first couple, they turned to me and they said, when can we do this again? I said, yeah, you don't need me here. You guys are creating, I'm just here to be guardrails, to keep you tethered to those two principles, and to make sure that you are creating that intentional space for these conversations, because they're building better relationships among themselves. They've got each other's backs. So it was a great team building experience for them, but they also were able to access one another's ideas and brains, because problem solving always works better when you have more brains involved. So if you have the opportunity to do that at your organizations, I vote yes. I think that can only be helpful and have a positive impact on the work that you're doing. So, and again, if anybody has any questions, or I tend to be the queen of, oh no, I've got no questions, and then that night as I'm falling asleep, I have like 6 questions. So know that again, I am happy to answer any questions, to set up a time to chat through anything. Don't hesitate to reach out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you be kind enough to put your email name in the chat box, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Your talk was great. I especially really enjoyed the comment and the reframing your language with flipping the script about a child not giving a hard time, but as having a hard time, which really could apply to adults too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's just as true for adults, right? I know that the people in my life, especially those that I'm the closest to, when they come at me with something, it's not about me, right? It's about what they're struggling through. And so how can I be rooted in a place that's not reactive? That you gotta keep your helper superhero outfit on all of the time. And being a helper does not mean being a fixer, right? Those are two very, very different things. You don't want to step into that fixer space, right? Because jumping in and reacting to fix something is is often not helpful. So making sure that you're intentional about being the helper, and remembering that one of the mantras I try to live by is seek first to understand and then to be heard, right? So that's my reminder about how important it is to really listen, and to allow that other person that opportunity. Sometimes people just need to unload, right? And as they're voicing what it is they're feeling and identifying what their problem is, often the solution that works best for them comes to them. But sometimes it's about providing that space, and that's being a great helper. But yeah, being the helper does not mean being the fixer. So, and that's hard because we always want to make things better, right? But you often, nothing you can do makes big things better a lot of the time. So great. All right.
Hey, I guess I just wanted to say thank you so much to Maya for your presentation, and for once again being, you know, a part of our community here in Orange County. And I know there are people here from other counties as well, so across the state. We really appreciate all that you do. And I want to thank everyone else who was in attendance, all the people who are working on being committed to seeing the good. I want to let you know I've got a lot of questions here, so we are recording this, and we're going to hopefully have it up on our website. I believe that's Cornell Cooperative Extension of Orange County's website by the end of the week. I want to also remind you that tomorrow we have Scarlett Lewis, the founder of the Choose Love movement. And she is going to be talking about social and emotional learning. And as Tamaé said, you know, how very important that is for helping our children. And also, so there's still a chance to register for the workshops tomorrow, and I hope to see you there. If today is the last day of you in this particular conference, I'm going to post a link in the chat with an evaluation. We really would appreciate your feedback. You'll also have a chance to provide feedback. We'll follow this up with an email. And we also want to let you know that this conference is what we have planned for this year, but that's not all. So 2021, we have a whole series that we're hoping to do around growing resilience. So we will share that in the email following up on this conference as well. But I want to thank you again. Thank you all for your time, and thank you again to Maya.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say thanks again, Susie, for letting me be a part of this. The work that you guys do in Orange County just amazes me. I'm so impressed by it. I love getting to be connected to it in some way. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. We've loved having your support in so many ways. So hopefully see you tomorrow, maybe.
Yes, I'm trying to move something on my calendar so I can be there. So
awesome.